and shorter than John.
Beautiful cloud.
And I want to thank you all for joining us tonight for our talk on tree health. And the Environmental Advisory Council is a very active group, and we have many fun projects that are going on right now. And I just wanted to make sure you all knew about our brand new project for the township. It's called the Healthy Yard Recognition Program. And we created this program to recognize residents for positive steps they are already taking and to provide inspiration and helpful tips for residents who would like to have a healthier yard. If you qualify, you get this very, very cool yard sign. And I mean, that's worth it. It was actually designed by Elizabeth, who's on the committee. She's in the back of the room. It will be metal, and the colors will be better. This is a sample. And we have an online application, which is very, very fun and interactive. It's got great pictures and information that pops up. It's like a video game, really. So to get to the application, you can do that on the West Vincent website, or you can just use the QR code on this sign. I'll leave it up here. So trees, tonight's topic. They provide so many services to our community. They collect rainwater to help prevent flooding, and we all know we need that really badly right now. They cool air and water temperatures in summer, something we need really badly right now. They remove carbon dioxide and pollution from the air and release oxygen. They keep pollutants from getting into our streams. They keep topsoil from running away. And they provide food and shelter for birds and pollinators. What you probably know all that. Not everybody knows that they play a crucial role in the underground network of fungi and soil organisms, which stores carbon, unlocks nutrients, and creates new soil for the future. And there is a Penn State video that's wonderful that goes over all the data that show the measurable physical and psychological benefits for people who live near trees. If anyone wants the link to that lecture, it's online. Email me and I'll send it to you. Being close to trees actually changes our immune system. It makes us healthier. Trees make us behave better. They make us drive better. There's data that supports what I'm saying. There's also data that shows that communities with trees get along better than communities that don't have trees. So we owe it to each other to plant more trees and to take care of the ones we have. So that brings us to John. I would like to thank John Nissen for coming tonight and giving us this presentation. John graduated from the Pennsylvania College of Technology with a degree in forestry in 1996. And he worked as a private forester from 1998 to 2014. He's been with the Pennsylvania Bureau of Forestry since 2014. His job title is Service Forester for Lancaster, Berks, Northampton, and Chester counties. Welcome, small area. Welcome, John. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So tonight, I'm going to have all the answers as why we have more dead trees than we ever did. So I'm going to try to go through some forest diseases and pests that we have throughout Pennsylvania and try to explain why we have some issues that we have been going on, which is very difficult to try to explain. I could only pick so many. I could spend hours just talking about insects alone or diseases alone. So I try to highlight some of the up-and-coming diseases and pests that we have here in the Southeast. So what exactly is a tree disease? It is a dynamic process where a living or abiotic or non-living abiotic entity interferes with the normal functions of a tree over a period of time. So a living biotic problem would be an insect or a fungus that's living. What about non-living? Could be salt from a road, drought. Those are non-living stressors, and each play a part in a tree's health. So we have different types of diseases. We have foliar diseases that affect leaves. We have the stem diseases, which would be cankers or wilts. Tree rots, which happen underground. Root diseases as well, which happen underground. Rust, and we have some mistletoe. So we have a whole bunch of different types of diseases that affect different trees for different diseases. For instance, black knot right here in the center affects cherry trees, particularly only cherry trees for that disease. So I have data from 2021 from the U.S. Forest Service. We have 3.5 million acres with foliation, 2.6 million acres with actual tree mortality, where trees actually died. From a number of reasons, whether it would be the big one, the emerald ash borer, oak wilt, which is in parts of Pennsylvania, the spongy moth, which we have in central Pennsylvania right now. Hemlock woolly adelgid has pretty much wiped out a lot of our state trees, eastern hemlock. And we have a new disease, which we're going to talk about, that's in this area. It's called beech leaf disease. So this map here shows the northeastern area of the U.S. Forest Service for the United States. So we have a large area. We go from Minnesota down to Missouri, West Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, and all the way up to Maine. So this was mapped, like I said, in 21. We had 3.5 million acres that is in blue that was defoliated. And if you look in north central, northwestern Pennsylvania, that was the spongy moth defoliation. The red is mortality, where the trees actually died from a number of causes. And then they have other where they're not sure. So we are not the only state, as you can see, upstate New York has major issues. I can barely see Vermont, actually. So Pennsylvania actually isn't bad compared to some. Northern Minnesota has a lot of issues as well. So we lose quite a few acres to tree diseases and insects than we harvest trees every year, and that's just a fact. They take more of a toll than what a lot of people think. It's a real shame that we have these issues. So the new one for us is beech leaf disease. Is anyone familiar with beech leaf disease? Have you heard of it? Few. Plain and simple, our beech trees are going to die. There's nothing we can do. We have it in French Creek State Park. I found it in North Coventry, so I can claim the thing in Chester County. It started, let me just read it. It's a new disease of beech trees called beech leaf disease. Has been increasingly been observed in forest areas in the eastern U.S. and Canada. Is raising serious concerns among foresters and local communities in affected areas. The disease was first reported in American Beach in Ohio in 2022 and is rapidly spreading to other counties in Ohio as well as Pennsylvania, New York, Connecticut, and Ontario. So it started in Ohio and it's working its way east. As of right now, every county has it. So in 2021, last year, Washington and Greene County was getting confirmed that they did just a few months ago. So all 67 counties in Pennsylvania has beech leaf disease. So the real easy way to tell beech leaf disease is it gets the dark green banding in the leaves. Nothing else gets that. Right now, if you go out, if you have a beech tree, and if you look up in the sunlight and see that dark green banding, that's it. Now, when you look up, you have to be careful, because if you have two leaves that overlap, that's gonna look just like the banding, but it's not. It's not the banding. So what we're trying to do is there's a trial going on that we're trying to use phosphate 30 fertilizer to give the tree like a boost, energy boost. So they're taking that fertilizer, they're using 2 ounces of product plus 14 ounces of water per inch, showing good results in smaller trees. And when I talked to our forest pathologist the other little bit ago, what's a small tree? She said about 4 inches. So that's diameter. So real small trees, they're seeing some promise with this soil injection. You can see the picture here. This is at Nolde State Forest outside of Reading. This was probably 2 years ago. Experiments with phosphate 30 at Nolde are happening right now. We did some at French Creek as well. The future doesn't look good for beech trees at all. Once they get this disease, they are dead in probably about 2 years. Yeah. We'll get to that. Yep. Next slide. So beech leaf disease, there's a nematode, a soft-bodied little insect, and they're not exactly 100% sure how the relationship works. But they know that this insect gets into the buds and causes some issues with the buds, and that's what is causing the death of the tree. So the nematodes overwinter in the buds. They can overwinter in the leaf litter, but predominantly in the buds. Early spring, when the buds are opening, the nematodes are present, and they infect the trees. Damage to the leaf occurs while the leaf is still in bud. Juveniles or adults, the nematodes are not found in symptomatic leaf tissue until late June or early July. Beginning in early summer, the nematode numbers increase through fall. Eggs are laid in the leaf tissue. So they don't understand 100% this disease, which is making it really difficult. They don't know if there's a fungus on the nematode or if the nematode itself is causing the issue. So there's all kinds of research being done, especially by Ohio State, where it started in Ohio. So the sad news is if you have a beech, you might not have it real long. So I've seen it. I know it's that white clay all the way down in the southern end of the county. It's not everywhere, but it's very sporadic. So be on the lookout for more dead beech trees. Oak wilt. So most oaks, but especially red oaks, are susceptible. White oaks tend to be more resistant. Leaves at the top of the tree turn brown along the tips and margins. They wilt and they fall to the ground. Well, there's still some green color left in the foliage. So the whole ground does not turn color. This disease starts at the top, very tippy top of the tree, and works its way down through it. This damage progresses down the tree. Brown streaks often are in the wood, sometimes very difficult to find. The trees usually die in about a year. When the bark is peeled back from a branch with wilted leaves, you may see blight under the surface. So we do not have oak wilt yet in this area of the state. It is pretty much west of the Susquehanna River. So that's a good thing. Like it says, the white oak group is pretty okay to battle it off. It's the red oak group, the pin oak, the black oak, the red oak. Those are the ones that cannot fight this disease. And again, it kills the tree very quickly. The issue is in the ground. There's a fungus that's in the ground that gets into the tree. The best way to stop oak wilt is to cut the tree down and actually go there and cut the roots, so the roots don't graft into other trees. That can work in a perfect world if you can catch it in time before it spreads to other trees through the root grafts. So another one that looks very similar is bacterial leaf scorch, which is much more common. Browning of the oldest leaves along their margins begin in mid to late summer on one branch or a few branches on the inner and lower portions of the tree. A wavy reddish-brown band sometimes develops between the brown and green tissue of the leaf. The browning of the leaves progresses to include more leaves towards the end of branches. Branches and eventually the entire tree can die as well from bacterial leaf scorch. Maples are very prone to get bacterial leaf scorch in hot weather like we have right now, hot, dry weather. It's not dry, but it's hot. This again, there's not much you can do for this once the tree is infected with this disease. Again, it's a fungal disease as well. So this looks like a mess. Oak decline. Everybody, most phone calls I get are, why are my oak trees dying? They were fine a month ago, now they're dead. Just like that. A host of stressors include climate, tree age, site conditions, and history of disease interact to weaken trees over time, ultimately leading to death when the tree's resources are exhausted. This death by 1,000 cuts, they call it, makes prevention of oak decline difficult, as stressors can vary both over time and by location. So what this picture, this graph is showing is there's more than one stressor that usually kill a tree in a year, especially oak trees. So, for example, if we have a spongy moth defoliation in May, where the tree just got defoliated by a insect. Now it's going to leaf back out again in June, and the leaves are still trying to grow. By the time we get into September, sometimes it gets dry. If we have a drought in September, and the tree was defoliated in May, that's two stressors in the same growing season. Trees can't handle more than one stressor in a growing season very often and do well, especially over time. If you recall, when we go back to 2-3 years ago, we had historical wet summers where we had just so much rain. And I asked our forest pathologist, why are we seeing trees die now when we had so much heavy rain 3 years ago? And my answer was, trees don't usually die sometimes right away. And an example that I can share is on one of our properties, we have swamp white oaks, large swamp white oaks, like 24-inch swamp white oaks. And when we were there treating our ash trees for emerald ash borer, this past June, they were dead. And I was talking to the other forester, and I'm like, these trees were fine last year, but 2-3 years before that, they got too much rain. They're swamp white oak. They're in a wetland area, right, to start with. Even they couldn't handle that much moisture. So there's a lot of factors in here that go into why sometimes trees die, and it's not just one factor. Like we all see trees planted in the middle of a parking lot. I mean, that tree is set up for failure because right away, the roots can't expand out. It's got, soil already compacted on it. They probably salt that in the winter. That's why a lot of those trees don't ever make it real large because they have too many factors against them right from the beginning. Sure, they'll last a couple of years, but they're not going to be able to live a full life. So a lot of times people really want, like, why did my tree die? And it's not just, especially with oaks, it's not just it died because of this. It died because of a number of reasons over a period of time. And that's kind of hard for a lot of people to understand sometimes. And it's hard for us to understand sometimes as well. Because, I want to think, well, it has to be something. No, it's more than something. It's a few things. And that's okay. Out of the oaks, chestnut oak seems to be the one that really takes the hit first. They cannot handle the stress as well as a white oak, which is weird because a white oak and chestnut oak are the same family. But chestnut oak seem to, especially in a forest setting, chestnut oak seems to go first. They cannot handle environmental stressors well at all. So anthracnose. During wet weather, young leaves are blighted as buds break occur on large dead areas between the leaf veins, primarily on lower branches. Winter twig dieback occurs, slightly raised brown dots. So these are the fungal fruiting structures. Form on the lower surface of leaves and on dead twigs. Often these can be seen without a magnifying glass, however, magnifying help define these small structures. So anthracnose usually does not kill a tree. It'll curl the leaves, it'll make them shrivel up. Again, this is a fungus that likes wet, humid weather, usually in the spring. Sycamores. Did anyone notice the sycamores in like May? And they were all brown. It looked like it was bad. I thought all the ones I've seen, I thought they're not gonna make it. They actually did come back, which is kind of odd because we had the driest May ever. It was like that's when we had the drought. It was in May, but we must have had quite a bit of rain in April for them to get anthracnose. I don't have that figured out yet, but sycamores are really prone to anthracnose, so is maple. But anthracnose very rarely will kill a tree. It's not going to make it look pretty, but it very rarely kills a tree. Verticillium wilt. Symptoms of verticillium wilt can be confused because they are so variable. They include marginal scorch and complete wilting of leaves on individual branches in the crowns of potential hosts. Symptoms can occur at any time of the year, but often show up when hot, dry weather begins. Sometimes a single branch or the foliage of one side of the tree will die. Trees can go through years where no symptoms are present and the symptoms show up all of a sudden. Some trees can struggle along for years while other ones do just fine. In addition to wilting, other symptoms may include small leaves, stunted shoot growth, poor radial growth, sparse foliage, and abnormal seed crops. One reasonably reliable diagnosis feature is that sapwood plucked by verticillium may be stained green. However, this discolorization is not always easy to find. You have to do it under a microscope, basically. So, verticillium wilt is another soil-borne disease. It's a fungus in the soil. If you have a tree, especially a maple tree, that you will get tested and it is verticillium wilt, if you cut it down and if you plant a new tree there, what do you think is going to happen to it again? Because it's in the soil. so no.
Can you test your soil for that you plant?
Yeah, you probably could. You could. I would have to find out where you would send it to do the right tests. Because they would have to be looking for that particular fungus.
I mean, I wonder if there's a way of planting new trees, saying, what, looking at the stage of the tree growing, quality of the soil, determine what's the best tree to put that on.
Right.
So to prevent problems in the future, I know you can't prevent everything.
No, that is a good point. And there are trees that don't get verticillium well, like maples do. So you can plant, hackberry doesn't get it, oaks do not get it. London plane, I don't believe gets it. There's a long list of trees that don't get it, but you have to know, just like you're saying, that it was verticillium will. But you can usually tell because it's not all through the tree at first, it's only in spots, but so is bacterial leaf scorch. They're very similar. That's the one issue between verticillium and bacterial leaf scorch is the trees look very much the same as far as damage goes. You almost have to get it tested. So now we have spongy moth. Spongy moth are capable of feeding on hundreds of trees and shrub species. They typically prefer North American hosts, oaks. Oaks are like really up there. Aspen, apple, willow, basswood, hawthorn, and some other species like black birch and alder. Healthy trees can often withstand severe defoliation for a few years, but tree mortality can occur when it gets really heavy defoliation year after year after year. So we sprayed 290,000 acres this year in north central, northwestern Pennsylvania. We do not have this issue down here in the southeast yet. The closest we have it is Fort Indian Town Gap on that ridge on the north side. There's game lands that has it. They're watching it. This usually goes in like 7 to 10 year cycles. But it really likes the mountain areas more than down here in the southeast a whole lot, yes.
I just wanted to interject so everyone knows this is a Eurasian moth. This is not a native moth. And our native moths most of them don't need to be sprayed.
Right, there's about 7 native caterpillars that we have, roughly. But this one does, defoliate and kill thousands of acres. Back in the 80s, it wiped out, millions of acres of forest. Just, like you would be driving up, Route 80 in July, and it looks like January. There's nothing on the leaves. And the trees can come back sometimes. So we try to be very, preventative now, and we try to do aerial spraying with helicopters and planes.
Caterpillar? These caterpillars.
I don't believe so, but I don't know. I never watched a bird have a caterpillar. They might. It's a good question. Okay. Southern pine beetle. So it likes all the hard pines. The only soft one we have is white pine. This is very susceptible to a southern pine beetle, including pitch pine, red pine, jack pine. In addition, southern pine beetle has been known to interfere white pine and other conifers when infestation is very active and when the southern pine population is extremely large. No hardwood species are affected. So this only goes after pine trees. Nottingham County Park, 400 acres, defoliated by southern pine beetle, all of it. It can do some very, very heavy defoliation. We have 1,000 acres at our Goat Hill Serpentine Barrens, which is 3 to 5 miles away from Nottingham. We have southern pine beetle. And we're trying to thin out some trees to keep the population low. That's what they do down south. They do some thinnings to keep the trees thinned out so they're healthier. It's harder for the beetles to traverse around. This is not going to probably be a major issue in Pennsylvania. We are a hardwood state. We're not a softwood state like in the south. But, Nottingham County Park is, it was a beautiful park. It had large pine, and this started, and within 2 years, all their pine was dead, all of it. I don't know if anyone has been down there, but it looks totally different than it did 5, 6 years ago. So, fall webworm. Fall webworm is a widely distributed forest pest, tree pest of shade trees as well and shrubs. It appears pretty soon. You'll see it soon in late summer through early fall. It feeds on 90 species of deciduous trees. It really likes walnuts, likes hickory, birch, cherry, and crabapple. This species acts similarly to the eastern tent caterpillar, but the fall webworm constructs its nests at the end of the branch rather than at the crotch of the tree. So in the springtime, in April, May, you'll see webs at the forks of trees, usually cherry trees. That's eastern tent caterpillar. That's not a major issue either. So like these pests that live in tents aren't major issues. We don't really worry about them. They don't usually kill a tree that often. Although I did see up by Kutztown along 222 where there was a lot of walnut. It really did defoliate their walnuts, but they did come back. So what I would do for these is, cut out the branch if you don't like it, that part, and probably burn them, throw them away, or, do something for them, but it's not going to kill the tree. Won't work for them. So we're going to switch gears, and we're going to talk about right tree, right place. So plant the right tree in the right place for safety. Plant taller trees away from power lines. That works well if you're starting from scratch, but just driving down here Route 100, I mean, the trees are a foot away from the wires. So, yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. That's right. Yep, right. That is true. And most trees along the roads aren't planted. They come up as volunteers. I've noticed just driving down, there's poplar popping up, sycamores popping up. So most people aren't planting them. Some do, and it's okay. I mean, it says no tree zone, 30 feet. You can plant trees in it. You just got to get the right tree. Small, medium trees you can plant as well, such as redbuds, dogwoods, and we'll talk more about some of these. And then like some larger trees like oak, maple. They're fast-growing trees, especially maple trees. They're going to be trimmed and trimmed and trimmed very hard. So the utility company is pretty much, they're on a 5-year, usually, trim maintenance schedule. So every 5 years, roughly, they have to come around. So when they want these trees trimmed, they have to trim them back hard enough for them not to get into the wires in a 5-year stretch. So if they trim some of these species real lightly, like a walnut or a maple, in 2 years, sometimes they still sucker out in their wires. So it really isn't helping to have the wrong tree in your wires because it's just going to get trimmed hard and eventually probably die if it gets trimmed too hard too often. So common urban trees in Pennsylvania, these are some shapes. So we have conical, round, we have spreading, we have columnar, we have broad, and we have base-shaped trees. So the picture is a little leaf linden. Nice tree, but still it gets size to it pretty quick, so that's not going to be a good tree near wires. That tree, little leaf linden, doesn't have many health issues either. It's just like a basswood. It's in the poplar family, so that is a good tree. If you want to plant in the yard, plant it in the morning, you might have shade for dinner. It grows quick. It grows really quick. It gets a real nice crown, and there's not a lot of issues with it. American sycamore. We all know this is a large tree. It's native. It will get anthracnose, as we talked a little bit earlier. It is very tolerant to pollution and drought. The bark is scaly, brownish at the base, exfoliating to white and green. It has single seed balls. London plane tree has a much more wider trunk, and it has 2 seeds instead of 1. So that's how you can tell from the London plane to the American sycamore. So these trees, as you can even see from the picture, there's power lines over there. I don't know, looks like Kansas, not Pennsylvania, but that tree is in the right spot. I don't know if it was planted or if it was volunteer, but that is where that should be versus where the power lines are. Because it gets very large, they're very old. Besides anthracnose, they don't have a whole lot of health issues besides that, really. They do pretty well, and they get large, real large diameters. So this tree would not be a good tree near wires, directly underneath wires for sure. Red maple, very common urban tree. It can handle an urban environment well if planted correctly. It can tolerate wet areas, also known as swamp maple. Poor nursery stock is a leading problem. It can have girdling roots. It's where the roots, when you take off the pot, the roots are already girdling around the main stem. And you have to try to take like a knife or some other thing like that and try to get the roots off of it already. If you just take it out, plant it with the roots wrapped tight around it, the tree will die. Anytime you plant a tree, if you take it out of the pot, you should take a knife and try to get the roots loose. Get them loose, get them out away from the main bowl of the tree. That's not going to hurt, it's going to help the tree. Also, when people plant trees, they tend to do way too much mulch. That's going to kill your tree over time. So there's a 3-3-3 rule. You want to mulch 3 feet out, 3 inches thick, and you want to stay 3 inches from the main stem of the tree. So you don't put the mulch right up against the stem, stay 3 inches. You only need 3 inches of mulch, but you should go 3 feet out. So the 3 feet out is going to protect it from people like my son that likes to run the weed whacker right up against the tree or the mower. That kills a lot of trees, actually, a lot of trees. But you don't want to mound the mulch. That's going to suffocate the main stem. That main stem needs to be out. So 3-3-3 for the mulch. Norway maple is not native, it is invasive. The leaves look very similar to sugar maple. Sugar maple's on the right. Sugar maple is native.
Sugar maple is native.
Yes.
Okay.
This is Norway maple.
Okay.
Yes. So So they look the same. Very, very similar. The leaves are very similar, except if you break off a leaf from Norway maple and squeeze it, you'll get a white sap out of the end of it. You will not get that out of sugar maple. Yes, it will be clear. That's correct. Yep. So, it's a shame it's invasive because it really holds up very well in Pennsylvania. It really gets not many issues either. But it really can get out of control and start growing all over the place. So we do not promote planting Norway maple, even though there's quite a few planted.
We have a big problem in the township here.
With Norway maple? Yeah. Another favorite. So this just got, I believe, put on the list for nursery that they cannot sell it anymore. I always say the best way to prune a pear tree is like as close to the ground as you can. Can't go wrong. Can't go wrong. It's very common. I mean, if we just drive around in the spring, you see them all along the roads, white, and they're pretty. I mean, they are pretty. I can see why people like them, but they can overtake. I mean, if you just let like a field go up, you might get Bradford pear, Callery pear in here. They do not handle weather very well. I mean, if you get a little bit of snow or ice, there goes your tree a lot of times. So it's going to take some time to probably not see them sold anymore. I don't know how they get the word out to everywhere that you can't sell them anymore. But they are banned, and hopefully, yeah, I'm not sure. I would imagine that this is a common tree in this township as well. In like some of these developments, and yeah, I would think so. Yes. Yep. Pennsylvania. Yeah, I'm not sure how they get that word out. I know that they work with the association of nurseries. So the builders need to go to those places for the trees. So I would imagine that's how, you know what I mean? Like the builders aren't going to be able to get that anymore. So they're going to have to find another go-to besides the pear trees. It's a good question.
Doesn't the township have to approve what the builders are putting on the land anyway? So can't the township make sure that none of these trees are planted?
Well, our township has fabulous ordinances for native trees. Not every township is that proactive.
Pretty sure that's on there. I'm pretty sure that's one that's on there that we're not supposed to have.
I think there's more and more states that are doing this. I'm almost certain that Pennsylvania is not the first one to ban it. So my gut feeling is it's going to get harder no matter where you're at to get these trees. And they're doing it for other species like burning bush, Japanese barberry. Those two are banned as well. They're shrubs, but they're banned as well. So and there's a ton of them in everyone's yard. So Kwanzaa cherry. This is a very nice open form tree. It can be used directly under power lines because it never gets real high. It might get 20 feet. It loves full to partial shade. It needs to be in an area that is not super wet. It needs to have some good drainage. But this is a very pretty ornamental cherry that does well near lines or not near lines. It can just be in a yard too. So these are Japanese flowering cherry. These are the cherry trees that are famous in Washington, D.C. And I just learned that they were planted in 1952 in Washington, D.C. So these cherries bloom before they leaf out. like crab apples bloom. They have a white option compared to the Kwanzaa. Early pruning needed to train for good shape. So if you want to have a really nice shaped tree, you have to start when it's young and shape it up really nice. It prefers sun. It needs good drainage again, so not a species for a wetter area. Good tree for 2x3 basins and beneath overhead power lines. So again, another species that can be planted directly underneath lines that are very, very pretty. And eastern red bud, one of my favorites. So this is a native tree. I actually see this in the woods, believe it or not. It's out there. Native tree that has limited pest and disease issues, blooms early in the spring, usually first. Available in white, purple, and pink flowers. Flowers are located the whole length of the branch. It needs an alkaline pH, if not blooming very well. Sprinkle lime around the mulch to raise the pH. So it's a little soil sensitive, but this tree here, pretty much you can't go wrong with it. It doesn't have a lot with it. It doesn't get real big, and it is shows beautiful in the springtime. So now we have some oaks: Corpus rubra, red oak, Corpus alba, white oak, and pin oak, Corpus palustris. So red oak is a native oak. They're all native oaks. Note the pointed lobes. I'm not sure why they say that because I can't even see the lobes in that picture, but I'm just reading stuff. It does relatively well in the urban setting. Can have issues with bacterial leaf scorch. Again, this is a tree that's not going to do well underneath or very close to wires. It's going to take a little time to grow, but it still grows at a good rate in an open environment like a lawn area. White oak, another native oak. It has rounded lobes. Great for wildlife. It's one of the best acorns. It's the sweetest acorn that we have for the deer and turkey. They love white oak. Supports over 200 species of animals. One of our longest lived oaks. It can live easily 200 years. Oak trees, believe it or not, they will start producing acorns around 20 to 25, but they don't really kick in and get really well until they hit age 45 to 50. And then they really start producing. So it takes time. Oak trees grow slower, and they don't produce acorns like so. If you have one in your yard that's a good producer, it's probably 40 years old or older. Pin oak, again, that tree really likes wet. That's a good wet species. That one really doesn't like a high dry site. So you have a choice between red, white, and pin, depending on where you're at. But again, pin oak will grow probably the fastest out of the three, and not a good choice again for near wires at all. Sweet gum, native tree, needs lots of room. Seed balls present a tripping hazard, so this would not be a great tree around like a playground, sidewalks, that sort of thing. Cannot penetrate through very compacted soil. Roots will stay near the top of the soil and may cause sidewalk issues. And that's true. That's true for any tree. Tree roots really don't go down far. They only go down a little bit and then they go out. Everyone's seen trees uproot. I mean, these trees are not deeply rooted. And trees really don't have a taproot. When they're really, really young, yes, they will have a main root. When they get larger, they don't have a solid main root. They have more fibrous roots that go out. So I just want to point that out there that trees don't go down deep, they go out. And typically their roots go out as wide as their crown, typically. A lot of times that can't happen because there might be a building or septic or all kinds of other environmental issues and factors there that are stopping it. Its roots.
I have a question. Take it out of that sort of how big is it?
Not-
Keep trimming so that they don't get.
Yeah, it would.
Would it prevent the roots from spreading out bigger?
Probably, yes, it would. But you'd have to trim the side. You couldn't just top it.
No, but I'm saying.
You'd have to
if
trim.
If you're putting in like a 2-inch spray, right?
Yep.
And you're trying to make sure that the tree doesn't, if you want it to be a sidewalk.
Right.
And you don't want the roots to uproot the sidewalks. If you keep it so it's only ever 7 feet or something like that, instead of letting it go to 12 or 15 feet. So if you gradually, over time, make sure the tree never gets where you inhibit the roots from spreading the way you're talking about.
You should be able to keep it smaller. Yes. Yep. That's right. Now, eventually, as the tree gets larger in diameter, the roots are still growing down there.
But
So,
I'm talking about keeping this tree safe, the whole thing. Like, you're not just topping it.
yeah.
You're doing the top, you're doing the sides and everything. Like you do your
Yep.
trees around your property, right? You
Right.
trim them,
Yep,
right? You
right.
keep them trimmed,
Mhm.
right? So you're trying to inhibit the root system from growing as big as the tallest tree by keeping the top of the tree short.
that's wide.
And wide.
That's
Yeah.
wide.
Yeah.
It's the width that matters more than the top. Yes. Yep. Right. So, this tree is not probably the best tree for a lot of areas because of the balls it has fruit. Zelkova, not native, but it's planted a lot in an urban environment, a whole lot. It's very similar shape to elm. It's a common replacement tree for elm. It's hard to correctly prune. This tree gets pruned incorrectly a lot. It may have splitting issues, narrow branching. It can tolerate air pollution. It is not recommended for under lines because it does get pretty tall. They plant this tree a lot in urban areas between a sidewalk and a road. One reason is because the branches actually, if they trim it right, the branches go up. So as cars are driving or pulling out, the branches are not in people's sight or vision. That's why this tree gets planted a lot in towns. And it's not native, but it really does okay. I mean, it's a tree, so I think we'll take it in certain areas where we can't plant a lot of things. And I was supposed to say something about climate change, which I don't have a whole lot to say about climate change right now tonight, but there is a webpage that we have that talks more about DCNR and climate change. So I just put that up there. Yeah, I didn't have much to say more about that. I think that's about it. That's it.
Well, thank you, John. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes.
Yeah, well, in one of your earlier slides there, you had a big chunk like of northeastern United States.
Yep.
States there, and with the foliated turf.
Mhm.
And it seemed like a lot of that stuff was right along state lines. Was there a reason for that? It seemed like, one side of Pennsylvania, where it butted up against New York, all of a sudden that disease wasn't there.
It wasn't there.
Well,
Can you go back to
yeah,
that slide?
like especially Vermont. Vermont looked like it was just
Yeah, it was covered.
full of horrible things. Like,
Yeah.
here we go.
Yeah.
You can see between Vermont and New York, it seems like a very clear demarcation, and even some places along between Ohio and
Mhm.
Virginia.
Mm-hmm. Well, Vermont's a very wooded state. Northwestern and Pennsylvania is very wooded. I wonder if it has to do with the amount of forest in certain areas or the type of forest.
Well, then this state doesn't
No,
And the damage that's gonna be, right?
that's not figured in here.
Yeah, right, that's 2021, right?
Well-
Go fast forward and add that in, that's gonna have an impact on the environment as well.
I don't know if the forest fires are gonna defoliate our trees. Well, this is a forest disease and pest, so every year they fly over. So we just flew, our state, and we're looking for trees that are off color, not green. And then we will go down there and walk there and figure out what's going on. And it's 99% either gonna be like a fungus or like a insect or disease. I don't think the fires are gonna,
But if drought stresses the tree, what you say, the smoke coming down, and it'll stress the environment, stress the tree. If the tree is stressed, they're more susceptible to disease.
yes, that is true. That is true. I'm not sure how the smoke's gonna affect the trees.
I guess we'll know.
Probably no 2-3 years. I hope it doesn't, because imagine how much smoke we just had come down. Imagine New York and all New England is gonna be, look like Arizona.
But the first fire is so natural thing for over million years.
That is correct.
So probably nature can tolerate.
Yeah, fire is something that, we took out of the equation. But if you go back, to the Indians, prior, they had fire all the time, and prior to people, there was natural fire. So now, with that said, our forests were much different, 500 years ago than they are today, But, I don't know, it's time will tell.
It's just another stressor, right? Just like everything.
Yeah, it's not gonna help, right? Yeah,
Is there any hope that some of these diseases, trees will become resistant and younger trees will be resistant? I mean, there still are some elm trees around.
there are,
Places.
that's true, and I've seen more ash trees in the woods this year than I did in a long time. Yeah, some small ones, in fact, and actually some advanced regeneration too, like I've been at a couple properties where they were 20 feet and they were really nice and green, and I mean, like they weren't treated or nothing, they were in the middle of the woods, so I think there is some hope for certain, diseases in trees. I can tell you though, we have, in the last 20 years, I mean, I could bring in like a forestry book on forest health from the early 90s, and they'll talk about 1 or 2, diseases for trees. Now if they print one, they might have 10 now. I mean,
But the lanternfly didn't help the trees either, right? Because they are,
the lantern flies, they like maple, they like walnut. I'm not sure why they like walnut. I know why they like maple, because they like the sap, sweet.
and they like the ash tree too.
Now,
They were all over the ash tree.
well, I guess if the population's high enough, they're gonna go on things, but that's not one that they prefer. Now, they like, tree of heaven, and they were able to kill a lot of tree of heaven, which we've noticed, which if there's anything good about them, that's the one thing that was good about lanternflies. But I mean, I'm not sure about down here, but I haven't seen hardly any lanternflies in my travels. And I go through Lancaster, I go through Berks.
I haven't seen as many as I have in the past, but they were everywhere, on the chimneys and.
Yeah, a couple years ago.
I'm seeing a handful of them, and I've planted a lot. Milkweed, hopefully, that's gonna be tracked.
Right.
I still see them, I saw babies on my porch, I kill them when
Yeah.
I see them, but they're around.
But not like they were 2 years ago. I guess that's what my point is. I think it's gonna be more like the stink bug, where they're gonna have a high and low, but I don't know. I mean, I am kind of surprised that I haven't been seeing them very much at all this year. Yeah.
Could you talk
I love talking about that tree. That's the only tree we can grow in our woods.
Well, so I have 3 that have volunteered in our yard. They're probably 2 years old.
Yep.
Big trees.
Yep.
They need to be moved because they're not in good spots. And I know the tree goes fast.
Very.
And I know it gets very, very tall.
Tallest tree in Eastern Forest.
And I know that it's not a good tree near the house because especially in isolation, I've heard they are unstable and they can come down in high winds and, heavy rainstorms. So I know I'm gonna transplant them in the fall. My question is, where should I transplant them?
How much property do you have?
I have about 5 acres. And it's partly, I have wood, and so I've got only 1.5 acres that's forest, and then I'm trying to reduce my other lawn size.
Right.
So right now, there are 2, these are not the ones that I'm transplanting, these are 2 other baby tulip trees that I have planted by the edge of the woods. So I don't know, should I take them in the woods? Should I? No, I didn't.
Well,
think so.
now, see, poplar likes, full sunlight.
Yeah.
So, different trees require, different amounts of, sun to regenerate. Oak likes a 50-50 ratio. Poplar likes almost 100% sunlight. So if you have a place in your yard that you can allow for a big tree, it's gonna take time, but it's gonna grow quicker than you think. Tulip poplars don't have many issues. They get poplar scale. So they get a tiny little insect that sort of sucks the life out of some branches, but it typically doesn't kill a tree. It really doesn't have many things that, go after it, but there's a poplar scale that will go after it. I haven't seen it kill many trees. It needs full sunlight. It grows very quick. It only has that problem with, one pest that I'm aware of, so you're gonna need to pick a place that you're gonna have room for, because like you said, they get very, very tall. They get like 150 feet tall,
I have room, and I have full sun. Should I space them out, or should I come?
I space them out.
Space them out.
Yeah, yes. I would definitely space them out, because they're gonna be, growing quickly, and you don't want them growing into each other too much. I would think, you're gonna have to help me pick people. Everyone, I don't know.
Donna, go ahead.
We have catalpa trees.
Yep.
Some old ones, some young ones, and, and we've been on our property for 25 years, and I would say it's been about 7 years. It was the first time a good sized caterpillar like this, black and green, which is a catalpa caterpillar.
Yeah, I've seen that. I know what you mean, okay.
And they get a pretty good sized moth.
Mhm.
I've seen some this year. That they have defoliated all of our catalpas every year but one, and 1 year they did it twice. They did it early, little leaves came back, and they came back and wiped them all out. I figure since they're called a catalpa caterpillar and moth, do they have some sort of symbiotic relationship? Is there something good coming out of this, or am I gonna be cutting these guys down?
They got a relationship, that's for sure, but I don't
They
think anything's,
definitely
I
do.
don't think anything's good since it's, defoliating your tree. And your tree survived 2 defoliations in 1 year.
Yeah,
Wow.
they get dead branches and stuff. We just had one.
Yeah, I'm not an expert with that one, so, but there might be a way to treat that tree so it doesn't.
Now, it's,
I'm sure.
we had Bartlett out to look at some other things.
Yeah, they would know.
They did.
They didn't.
Maybe it was just our guy.
Yeah, because they're usually spot on
Yeah. He did. But he took one.
in the orange. Yep.
They just put out, because living seeds, you would have huge popular trees everywhere, green and yellow, and that's the only crop. And apparently the seeds don't have to scrap the first year, they go
That's correct. That's correct.
So I wanted to know, about the beach disease, affect copper beaches.
Yes.
That's why, and then I have one in the yard that just died, just totally died.
Yeah, if you didn't see the banding, which maybe you didn't know, look, obviously you didn't know or look,
No, it's not.
it's harder to see. Yeah, but you might be, yeah. I have never seen it in any ornamental beach yet, but I was told it affects all beach. That's correct.
And my
No.
second question was, I mean, say about global warming, but I'm not pushing on this. How many of these trees are going to survive when it's 110 and 120 degrees? Is this going to affect the forest entirely?
If the temperatures keep going up, yes. It's gonna affect, it's gonna affect species like sugar maple, which is a northern, so, sugar maple it's at its southern range in this part of Pennsylvania. Okay, so, it won't grow naturally in the pine barrens. Go to upstate New York, it's the most common tree in upstate New York, sugar maple, number one. So species like that, it's gonna affect. Red oaks, red maple grows from Orlando all the way up to Maine. It's our most common tree in Pennsylvania. Red maple, black birch, black cherry. Those three are most common species in the Commonwealth, in a forested setting. So there are going to be some species that might get affected, down the road, but most of the species that grow here can handle quite a bit of, temperature extremes. Not all of them. So I'm not sure 100%. Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
And the next year, the one branch was great, another branch suddenly died. I'm not sure what that.
On red bud,
Just nothing was working off that I could see. Wood structure without leaves, so I mean, it's just dead.
and it was growing in your yard,
Yeah,
not in your driveway or anything, or?
this was planted in a city house, but it looks like. This is so strange for one, and it's still the one branch, bifurcations and all, it's all growing great, the others just totally.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yes.
I also have two questions. First, hackberries, do they have any problems?
Well, every tree has a problem. It's lower on the totem pole as far as problems. I don't get many calls for people that have issues with their hackberry. Now, that being said, hackberry doesn't grow everywhere. It likes wetter areas. I guess you could plant it in a lot of places, but it might not do well long term. But no, that does not have a whole lot of issues. Is it wet? Okay.
And then the other thing about the beech leaf,
Yes.
does that, have you seen it in Vegas or Alaska? Because I have a very large one.
Give me the common name of that.
The European beech
European.
has like a dark, and mine is a rivers beech. It has like a darker purple leaf.
I didn't see it in it, but it's gonna get it. I mean, it's not, it's gonna affect all beech. So, I can't tell you if your tree's definitely gonna get it, but it could. All beech is on the table to get beech leaf.
fungus on the bottom of an oak tree.
Bad news. Root rot. Tree needs to be cut down.
No.
Yes. Or it's gonna come down. Yeah.
That's what
Yeah. Now, that could last another 10 years. Why not? Root rots are
I
not,
cut it off in time, but is it too late? People like to see it?
yes, that's too late. That's not the issue. The issue is where you can't see. So that we have to remember, trees rot from the inside out. So many times a tree will look healthy, and for some reason, someone will want to take it down because they're tired of it. And then they cut it down, and the whole center is rotted. I mean, I can almost guarantee you that your tree, the first couple feet are shot. So, yeah. In the back, gentleman with the hat, use some questions.
Massive diameter, and so that's massive.
So who's tasked with managing all the diseases in Pennsylvania?
We are the Department of Forestry.
And what is your yearly budget?
What is our yearly budget?
Yeah.
I'm not at that pay scale to know. I'm at the roots, man. I'm down here. So. I don't know. We don't have a state budget.
That was going to be my question. Not enough to manage properly, control that, how much more would the forestry department need?
Yeah, so we manage the forests, and we also manage the, pests and, disease, but, Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture has a hand in it too. So it's not just us. So like when the, spotted interfly hit the ground, it was, Department of Ag was running that show as well. So it's not just us, but it's us and Department of Ag. We work together on health issues with trees. But as far as budgets go, I am not the right guy to ask. So that's an easy one. Yeah.
I had a couple questions about treating trees. And first off, I'm assuming that a lot of these, say the beech trees, that you're treating them in advance of an issue, but once they have a problem, it's too late to treat them. Would that be true?
So for beech leaf disease, we are actually treating trees that are infected.
And is it working on those?
It's working on really small trees that they're showing some improvement, but it's way too early.
Well, and the other thing is with the ash borer, everyone's been trying to save these ash trees and not with a lot of success. And I'm just wondering if some of the treatments are harmful for the environment or for the soil. If maybe they're saving trees, maybe they're not. But what else are they doing? Is there anyone looking at that? We're saving the tree, but
Right.
What are we doing?
So we've been treating ash trees for 2014 we started. 2015 we started treating ash trees. And we treat on our state forest here in the southeast, which is very limited. I mean, we have 3,000, we have about 2,500 acres in the southeast, which is not a lot. Susquehanna State Forest in Potter County has 290,000 acres, so that gives you an idea. We only have a small area. We treat 200 trees. We still lost some trees that we treated. I do not know, I do not hear of any scientific evidence or data that we're doing harm. Now, when we treat the trees with the product that we use, it's a IV injection that goes into the tree, up into the tree. It's not going in the soil for that, particular disease. But you wanna know in general, like, in general, like treating, I mean, I don't know, there's so many.
Yeah, I think, that's just something I always wonder about. Is it worth trying to save the tree to do possibly more harm to the environment or the soil?
Yeah,
You know, because what are we treating it with, and when do you make that call?
right. I've never heard of any, data that says that we're hurting anything else. Or I mean, no one ever told me about anything, you know. Yeah, I'm not sure. I guess that's a possibility though. Yeah.
So along those lines, when you guys sprayed a couple million acres to get the gypsy moths, didn't that kill a lot of other stuff?
No, they've been, I mean, if we were doing that, and if people were hiking all through our state forest and seeing all kinds of critters laying there, we would be in we'd have issues. And that's just not the case,
So you can spray specific to that.
That's correct. That's correct. So basically the caterpillar eats the tiny little pellets and it blows them up, explodes them. Yeah. But we have not had any issues with, type of species that we're really hard on or something. That's not. And a lot of people ask me that question with like treating invasive species. They want to know, how do I get rid of these invasives on my property? And I tell them, well, you have to use herbicide. That's really the only way to get invasives under control. A lot of people don't want it, and I get it. But if you have the time to pull Japanese silkgrass by hand, go at it. That seed stays viable for about 8 years, so you'll be pulling for a while. So is it worth it? Is it not worth it for these things?
On the emerald ash borer, we have a tree that we're treating. When we started treating it, having it treated, they told us you're gonna have to treat it forever. Is that what you're still thinking too with the trees that the Forest Service is treating?
We're hopeful that that's not going to be the case, but we are still treating them since we started. Are you treating your tree every 3 years? Yeah. So you're using what we're using. Okay. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Right. Yeah. And that's what we do. Hopefully not. But I don't know what it's going to be like. 10, 20 years from now. Is the wave going to move through? I don't know.
The fungal diseases that are at the end of your tree problems, there's nothing is anyone working, especially for the oak, our most important tree? Is there anything that can be done to affect the fungus?
The funguses. I mean, there's people doing, research on
Right.
them, but I don't know how far they're getting with it.
So right now, there's nothing.
No, there's nothing. And the problem, funguses, they need the right weather environment to breed. And that's a huge factor. And I don't know if they are focusing on that realm of things, but I mean, it's only getting, a lot weirder weather every year. So I don't believe they're making very good progress. I didn't hear anything.
And then I had a question that was emailed in from someone on Zoom, and they wanted to know if the county or state can help with removing dead trees along roads.
No, I get that a lot. Along the roads, it's going to be depending on whose jurisdiction it is. Township, state, there's wires. They're going to have a better chance because the utilities really don't want dead trees along their wires, although sometimes they do. But we do not have any funding. That's not our game to do that. So, yes.
I just wanted to just talk about fruit trees at all.
Yeah, they have quite a bit of issues. I mean, they need to be sprayed and, tended and all kinds of things. I'm not a fruit tree expert. One thing about forestry, there's so many trees, I'm not an expert in everything. I didn't focus on fruit trees, but they do need a lot of, tender care and a lot of spraying to keep them healthy. So, yes, that is a high maintenance tree.
Anything else?
What about rust? I was thinking about that with the fruit trees. And you started to mention it, but you
Cedar
didn't really
apple
talk
rust and
about
stuff,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, is there anything that you can do to prevent rust? Or is it just sprays?
Yeah, because of the environmental factors that are there, it's always gonna happen to some degree, But that usually doesn't, I mean, if you can stay on top of that, prune it out and stuff, your tree's fine.
It sounds like our trees are telling us there's some climate change issues that they're not,
Happy with,
yes, willing to live with.
yeah.
It's scary.
Yes. And the one thing that they're trying to work on is, we know that in our forests, trees die. And they've always died. But they're trying to get a baseline to work off of to see, are they dying more now than they were back in 1970? Folks for sure have more issues now than they did, 40 years ago. There's no doubt about it. I would imagine. Yes.
Each and birch are different trees, right? Just wanna make sure.
Yes. Beech and birch are totally different.
Is the American chestnut completely gone?
No, it's not completely gone. I see sprouts in the forest that resprout, but of course it gets the canker, the blight. But they can still live a number of years. I just had a landowner up at Hawk Mountain who had one on his property as tall as his ceiling, probably 12, 13 inches, and it just died this year. Just up and died this year. It was perfect last year. It did have the canker for a number of years, and I think the canker just got to it. But again, he had it for probably 15 years. They never get to be mature trees anymore. So we're not going to see that. Now they're making a lot of progress. I forget what generation they're up to now, but they have it where they're almost pure American chestnut now that you can get stock from. A lot of yes, it's resistant. That is correct.
What were the three trees in the forest? Red maple?
Red maple, because it'll grow anywhere. Black birch and black cherry. Black cherry is not real common here, but across much of Pennsylvania, especially northern Pennsylvania, that's black cherry country. So
We have quite a bit here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, it's just down here. It's if you go upstate, the cherry up there looks like our poplar. Beautiful. It's the best cherry in the world. To be honest with you, if you get up to Potter, McKean County, that's like the best cherry in the whole country. And they know that too. Like the buyers will come for our timber sales and they want to buy it and they know exactly where they want it. And, yeah, so, yeah, maple, birch is an issue. Birch, we try to get rid of birch because that overtakes the forest. I mean, if like we do any type of a harvest in the woods, birch just comes in a lot. I mean, it's very prolific. Black birch, or sweet birch, I call it black birch.
Do they like moist, environment?
Yep, they do. But they'll grow anywhere too. Anything else?
Right, thank you all for coming, and you could go home and fill out your Healthy Yard recognition application and get a really cool sign. And you can come to our EAC meetings on the first Thursday of the month at 7 o'clock and learn about all the fun stuff we do.
Thank you for your help.
Thank you.